Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Navigating Leadership number 17. I always get so happy when I get a chance to meet with my administrative crew in building our PLN every Saturday morning. This week, we're not going to disappoint you as we're going to dig deep into a topic that we all think is very important. It's academic coaching within our schools. My name is Dean Packard. I'm the principal of Charlton Middle School in Charlton, Massachusetts. And alongside of me, I have my friends, multiple of all of them here with me this morning. But more importantly, I also have Chris Starcheski, the co-host of Unlocking the Middle. Chris, I'm going to toss it over to you. Great to see you, my friend. And also Joe, Josh, and AJ, great to see you too. Chris, how are you, brother?
Hey, doing great. We had football return to town last night. We had Fall 2 kicking off on the eve of spring. It's a little bit odd, but it was great to see the boys out there on the gridiron and competing, get to see some smiling faces and hear some crunching hits. But today is certainly looking like a baseball Saturday. We've got bright skies, and we're going to be up around 60 degrees or closer to that today. Pretty exciting times. Looking forward to it. Rest and relax and recharge before the week ahead.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. Well, listen, you all know that we have Texas, Florida, and New Jersey covered here with us this morning too. Gentlemen, Joe, how are you? We'll go around the table.
Doing good, man. Doing good, brother. Miss you guys. I'm glad to be back on Saturday.
Good stuff. AJ, shoot it over.
Gentlemen, what's going on? Good seeing you. Thanks for the invite. Beautiful day today. Definitely baseball weather.
Great stuff. And Josh, bring it home.
Good morning. Finishing up spring break, ready for the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter on Monday. Fourth quarter.
I can't believe it's on us, man. I'll tell you what, the journey just keeps spinning, and day by day, you put your head on your pillow at night, wake up, and you're having another pivot. So we will get there. We will get there together, and we'll always do what's best for students, staff, and parents. And that's why we do what we do. All right. Hey, this morning, guys, we're just tossing out a topic called academic coaching. We know how important that is as students, as we try to provide the very best platform for students to be as successful as they possibly can. In all of our buildings, I'm sure that we have a lot of similarities to what that looks like. But more importantly, I think we have our own twist on what supporting students could be. So again, there are a lot of different ways we can go. We can talk about RTI. We can talk about academic support. We can talk about tiering students. But most importantly, let's talk about what we all do in our schools. I'm going to first kick it off over to Josh. Josh, in your school, let's talk about academic coaching. What does that look like? How do you get your teachers involved, your students amped up, and your community to embrace that?
I think it's been my experience to make sure that when you enter the hallways of that new house that you get chosen for, is that you really absorb what was there prior to you walking into that campus. You need to understand that when you apply for that chair, what is their academic history in regards to what's going on with, and let's use a universal report card grade, A, B, C, D, because every state is different on their accountability. So if you walk into a campus and you chose to apply for a D school, you need to understand what practices were there before that and acknowledge the successes. And from there, you build on and you bring in what you've seen as successful practices. If you walk into a B or an A campus, most importantly, a B campus, we need to remember the enemy of great is what? Good, Jim Collins. So we need to understand is what's preventing us from going to the A level. So generally, you need to be able to take 3 steps back and then have that street cred with your peers. Make sure that they believe in what you're bringing to the table. Let them know why that's been a successful tool before, and always live within those classrooms. So currently, our foundation is Fundamental 5. That's been a very successful tool because it's simple, engaging to kids, summarizes the lesson at the very end. But you need to keep on having those ongoing conversations, because when you do bring in a brand new strategy, if you've always been running the ball and all of a sudden you start passing it, it makes people uncomfortable. So you need to ease into your new game plan here in education. And also, it's very important that I state this. When you walk into that school, you cannot forget the past success. Because then those people that were successful, that used to be a national blue ribbon school, that used to be an A campus or B campus, and now they're at a different level, lower level, what are we doing to say, look, we have some good stuff? Let's build from that good foundation. You can't ignore it, because then you're telling those people what you did in the past was irrelevant. So for us right now at our current campus is a Fundamental 5, but it's crucial that We build connections with our team members, we acknowledge the successes of the past, and we build from that. And whatever your game plan is, at my previous campus, it was Fundamental 5, PSYOP, thinking maps, and putting them all merged together and making sure we say, hey, if I say PSYOP, if I say thinking maps, if I say AVID, whatever it is, it's all about engaging kids and having those conversations with them.
Chris? Oh, Chris.
Sorry, I'm still not used to the platform and Zooming and meeting, I guess. It's not enough practice in the last year. Academic coaching and tutoring are two very different things. And sometimes we get caught up on the academic side and we focus on the skill, that discrete piece. A math teacher may have an issue with a kiddo learning rational numbers. Right. So what do? We drill and kill the rational numbers. We try and present the information to them in multiple modes, and they're still not understanding it. What we're missing in that case is the child's understanding, of their kind of the executive functioning skills. How are they organizing their thoughts? How are they organizing their understanding to be able to apply it? So, for me, that academic coaching piece lies at a foundational level inside those executive functioning areas. And I think we've got a very good understanding of that, in our building, in terms of approaching organization, primary use of the student agenda to organize, activities and assignments, long-term planning for projects, intermittent due dates that are provided to all students, use of graphic organizers and procedural templates, but not holding all students to the same expectation, providing a variety of tools that they can all access. But if student B needs something specific to be accessed, that student follows that pathway. And the teachers really having that understanding. And this ties into that whole, here in Massachusetts, we call it the MTSS, the multi-tiered system of supports. Throw any acronym you want at it. Basically, it's how do you identify a student's needs and provide them either with coaching or with a guide, a roadmap to be individually successful. And that's the foundations for me, I think.
Joe?
I think you guys are spot on. Josh, as always, Chris, as always, you guys are really hitting that piece. And I think that one of the pieces that, everything you guys have hit in terms of the veteran teachers, don't want to discredit everything that they've done along the way. And the new teachers, I saw a comment that just came up, very, very important as well, to make sure that they don't become one of the, the teachers there, that they develop who they are on their own, because that's who you hired them for. One of the things I can tell you from the academic coaching standpoint that I utilize, along with a lot of the pieces that Josh and Chris said, right from the get-go, is also understanding how to develop a pathway for the teachers to plan. One of the big pieces is backwards design. And I think, to me, that's one of the most important pieces that I take a look at. If you've been there before, it's not as hard to navigate how to get there again. And if you've been there multiple times, it's easier to navigate than helping people get there as well. And I think that we don't give, and I don't mean to say this in generalization, but I find that we don't give the students enough credit in terms of getting their involvement into what the path is going to look like and what their what the goal is for each and every one of them individually, to know where they are and to know where they're searching for. I think sometimes we throw things up against the wall to see what sticks, but to really engage the students in understanding what that's going to look like for them and what the end goal will be in terms of what they'll be able to do with these skills is just important. I love that backwards design model. I love the kids being able to see that exemplar work ahead of time, to be able to understand what they're doing and be able to utilize those at your PLCs, your learning communities with your teachers, so that they understand what they're building to. Because not every kid's going to take the same path. That's what makes a teacher an artist at what they do, because they have got to be able to develop all these individual pathways for everyone. It's just amazing to me. So that's just the way I see it.
Awesome. Thank you. AJ, through your lens.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, just going back to the classroom, I feel like this is why I use choice so much in my class. You talk about pathways for students, you talk about how they're going to find a way to get to where they need to be. As a teacher, we have the beginning and we have the end goal in mind. Giving students choice in the classroom, having them decide how they want to learn, where they want to go with their learning. That's where this all comes in. I came into a school It's a very strong academic school, but of course there's always things that we're going to change. So I'm trying to promote this idea of choice and choice boards and learning menus, this personalized learning, because I feel like when the teacher has the ability to give the students the path, and then the kids can fill it in the way they want to, that's where you're going to build this different motivation for our students. That's where you're going to give them time to conference with the teacher. And it's not just lecture up front. Now it's teacher on the side, meeting with students individually. What's your plan? Where do you want to go? Guidance counselors can take that. So I see that in this class, you're finding a lot of success in math, but you're struggling in social studies. Why? And then we can look at the career path, and everything kind of fits together when you give them the choice and you give them the ability to kind of structure their learning the way they want to. And that's what I'm trying to promote with my teachers. And some of them are buying in, but in this environment that we're in right now, it's really hard. But I think that's something down the road that we're going to start seeing a lot of success with.
I'm glad you said that, AJ. One of the things that I think about often, and I think all of our schools share this, we have what's called district accommodation plans. And if we look at teachers in general are very comfortable delivering the content, and they feel where they're at. And again, if a teacher can master, and I've always said, every teacher that walks into a school, you are a differentiation specialist. You are a co-teacher, whether you like to be or not be, okay? Because kids are tiered. Kids are at different levels of entry points for their learning. If you can understand a district accommodation plan and intertwine it into what you do every day, you have fewer students not connecting with curriculum. You have fewer kids going on IEPs. You are making adjustments to practices on the fly, and all of a sudden learning becomes smooth. What do you guys say to that when I talk about your accommodation plans within your schools and how well your teachers can absorb the multiple layers of differentiation to get kids where they're at? And let's go down to Chris. Why don't we start that one off?
Sure. The DCAP, or best practice strategies to help students access their learning. And, when we start to sit down and identify, how kids learn best, the most important aspect to that isn't that current classroom, because the teachers know it. It's the transition from 6th grade to 7th grade, 7th grade to 8th grade. And how do those teachers have a learning curve for what those students are able to do and how they're most able to access curriculum? Having that as a part of the norm, that's something we can certainly get better at, but we all have the foundation for. So, if a kiddo comes in, having that real deep understanding about how they process and how they learn, and a teacher gets that might take until October or November before the teacher actually catches on, right? So the kiddo is kind of floundering because the teacher may not be providing that support from the beginning or that option, to that child. So for me, it's that documentation piece, it's the transitional communication, it's the formality behind the process. And as soon as we put formality behind the process, though, we've got to balance the teacher's autonomy to feel as if they can still dive in and not follow a prescriptive plan. Then we start talking about students with disability, 504 versus DCAP, mandate versus suggested. Navigating those waters of conversation requires a really good understanding from the teacher level to that student support team level. And there has to be a really good trusting relationship in order to get that kind of triangle complete. Student support, education, active learning in the classroom, and that student at the top. So once we are able to connect those pretty tightly, that DCAP just becomes natural flow, and it's quicker turnaround each year.
Josh?
I think that some of the things that we leave out on our conversations, and I like what we're saying right here, but I'm just thinking about schools in Texas and in Florida, right on the border. Because the kids that go to U in Massachusetts and New Jersey, I'm not assuming, because 4 agreements say not to assume, but they know English. They know how to read English. And us at the border area, and if you've seen the news, we have a large influx of new students coming in from Central America. It's about having the basic understanding of targeted and focused instruction for our students. Because when you have a campus of 89% lower socioeconomic, free and reduced lunch, which that's our poverty level, we need to remember that it's not about the student. In our case, in a lot of schools, it's not the case of let the students select, because they're practically illiterate in their first language. When I came to this country, I didn't know that I wasn't that prepared. And so when I was fully assimilated into the American culture, I wasn't prepared for let Josh select his education. No, feed me from the foundation aspect as a student. And so for us, and I think that I would like to hear some comments from other people that live in the border area, California, San Isidro, San Diego. You know that for us, it's about providing as administrators, someone that sits in our chair, the opportunity to break down the TEKS, our curriculum, our state curriculum, and making sure that we're sitting with them as they break down that month's goals. Because that's what we did. We broke down, based on solution tree and their ideas of the 4 PLC questions, is that you spend 2 days on planning what your objectives for the 9 weeks is. As Joe said, start with the end in mind. Where are we going at the end of the 9 weeks? And then you, as the administrator or the assistant principal in charge of that department, sits during that breaking down of the TEKS, which is our curriculum in Texas, and how we're going to be assessing that. And then we follow up with our walkthroughs. And then we need to see that the students are understanding it. Again, I have kids that are fully illiterate coming to my current campus from Vietnam, from the Middle East. I know that in New Jersey and some parts of that area, you all experience this. What are we doing at that point to not only support the 4 PLC questions, collaborative team, but what are we doing to make sure that we're fully embedded in those discussions, bringing our past experiences? So I hear all this, and it's great that you have that luxury, but a lot of us have low performing schools. A lot of us have students that are not fully literate in their second language. So we need to take steps back on how to build a solid foundation for them. And then that's where the love comes with our team members, because they get frustrated. They look into the eyes of kids, and we all know when we look at a kid's eyes and there's a blank stare, how frustrating is that, you as the educator that wants to help him or her? And so we need to be there for them during those times in the hallway and to say, hey, good job in that lesson. Hey, don't get discouraged. Keep on sending that information out to them. Because when you're in a campus like that, when you're in the border with Mexico, when you're bringing in a bunch of students that don't have a basic foundation, what are we doing to only support academics, but also the SEL of the adults and the kids?
Joe, great points, Josh.
No, absolutely. And I could jump in with Josh on that all day. And I think that, guys, also taking this into consideration with what Josh is saying, that there definitely is a stark difference when students arrive at your school coming from a different country or coming from, border situation, where you may have students who all of them are definitely ascertaining the second language, which is English, when they get here. But some of them have had formal schooling in their native language and some have not. So what you have is a set learner who can come in and process information because they know how to learn in their native language. So when they come into a school to ascertain a second language, they do have some pieces in place. And then you have some students who come in who have not had that formal schooling. And so we're trying to teach them how to be able to be a student and receive information. So it's definitely a balance to find that out and working with the teachers to see who has come in with that. And I think that one of the pieces that I take into consideration with my teachers, getting back to the subject at hand, really it comes down to the goal each year. And I think that this is just my pure opinion coming from it, how we have really hurt ourselves in education, is that we don't concentrate on the growth as much. We really concentrate on the end result. We plant the seed and we come back 8 months later to see how much the tree has grown. And I think, to me, what we need to take a look at and a step back on is, do we have the same expectation for every student to pass these tests? Is that as important as each and every student having the same opportunity to grow each year? And that's the biggest point to me. That's the part where I can tell you right now, you want to clean up all this equitable and all this stuff going on in the United States. Make it about growth. Make it about each and every individual child's ability and chances and opportunities that the teachers provide for them to grow. And if that student can show a year's worth of growth, at least, which is what our expectations are, then theoretically we're where we need to be. But I think one of the things that with my teachers that I work on is it's hard because we set this goal of this is where each kid's the 18th hole is. There's only one 18th hole, and that's not true. Just like Josh is saying, For those students who are coming in and basically the first step and goal, let's say, for instance, they've had no formal schooling, well, then the first set and goal is for them to begin ascertaining that second language and understanding how to be a student. How are we expecting them to learn within a language if they weren't taught how to learn within their native language? Second piece, if they do have that formal schooling, ascertain the language once again, and then we start working on them being able to hit standard level at the English language. And I think that, to me, is just the pieces that we cripple ourselves on. And I'm sorry to go off on a tangent, but that equity piece is huge to me, where I think growth could really change the eyes of a lot of things in education, where when we talk about that proportion of years growth for each and every child, that minimum expectation is that 1 year. And knowing that if a kid grows over a year and a half, 2 years, Josh and I have seen this, and I know you guys have too, where these kids are processing the language so fast and they're moving so fast, but then the next year they hit that plateau and they don't grow as much. Well, guess what? They're still kids. You can't expect them to grow at these expedient rates year after year after year and expect them to have the same growth year after year after year, because they are going to hit their age developmentally and they are going to hit their piece. So I'm sorry to go on a tangent, but as long as my teachers have that mindset, if you're not growing, where you're going, where are you going? That's the biggest piece.
Think about that for a second with accountability. You know, apples to oranges sometimes doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But student growth year over year, common sense says it's working. AJ, you're up, brother.
Hey, you guys are on fire. There's so many things that I wanted to touch on, but we look at the chat. We had the idea of true differentiation and PD. We talk about differentiation. Our teachers may not know what differentiation actually looks like and how we can get to the kids to be where they need to be. How are we going to get them to grow? What are they doing in the classroom? A lot of our teachers are focused on that end goal. I have to get through my curriculum. How many times we heard that in a given year? I'm not where I need to be right now. And then we go in for observations and we tell them, I don't do this, but some people do. Your lesson plans don't match where the curriculum is. How come you're not on this guide? If the teacher took time because they need to get the kids to a point where they feel the kids are comfortable, that's where they need to be. That's a differentiation. I think, a lot of us are stuck in our ways that, we have to do A, B, and C in that order, but you really don't have to. You can mix it up. You can make sure that the students are finding a different flow. As the teacher, as your classroom, you're the one who is really directing this. If you notice your kids are struggling and you know that they're not going to be able to do the next part of the curriculum, why would you just push them? Why would you rush them to that? We need to make sure that the kids are finding success, whether it is the beginning or the end. We'll get there. They'll get there. That's why right now in this environment, that term learning loss kills me. Our kids they're not losing their learning. They're learning in different ways. They're just not learning the typical way. And that's actually a good thing, because then we can change schools for the better to meet these goals that we keep talking about, to give teachers the PD that they need to be successful and have success for the kids as well.
Yeah, reinventing. Yeah, you're spot on with that. And, Chris, I'm sorry, I'll go 1 second. I was just thinking, I was looking at some of the comments on the side from Tasha 12. I wonder how we get that kind of PD and differentiation to stick with teachers. Well, that's an administrative thing. We start talking from our special education department. They are pioneers, and our SPED teachers are the masters of differentiation. On those types of conversations, those type of workshops, those types of understanding how to roll those district accommodation plans into your overall planning units. That's just huge. Those are good practices. And I think those come over time. But more importantly, if you do that, and if you take the term metacognition, learning to learn, we're dealing with kids between 10 and 14 when everything spins 1 million miles a second. So you can't go overload. You can't be that. And I used the term in a conversation we had before, being a race to the top state that we are. We have got to be the best, and we've got to keep pushing. Okay. There are saturation points for everybody. Teachers, kids. And when you start thinking about scope and sequence and what's important and what you teach is so much more important sometimes than how it gets out, because you've got to hit on the standards that are very, very important for growth and transitional, whether it's longitudinal or latitudinal across the district. Those things are important. So going back to that, one thing I wanted to add to this is the goal setting that we do, not only for kids for academic success, but for teachers. When you're doing your school improvement plans and you're stopping and thinking about what's important, less is better. I'm going to say that again. Less is better. What are your big rocks? What do you want to focus on? If it's academic progress, what areas of academic progress do you think everybody should be dropping their oars in the water at the same time on? Because then you begin to build momentum. You begin to build conversation. You begin to build best practices, support, collegial conversations. Oh, what happens then? Kids take off. You think about that for a second. So throwing the term goals out there and what that might look like within your buildings to help support the academic growth, where are you guys at? Joe, we'll start down there with you.
Okay. Guys, and you've gotten to know me over the last 4 or 5 pieces in regards to conversations about what we're doing on our buildings. And I think we're all really starting to get to know, what flavor we all bring. And I think one of the things that I continue to lean on is default infrastructure in terms of what each teacher, let's think about the teacher and academic coaching. Well, what pieces do you got in place that sets a culture to say PLCs aren't going to be a conversation where you've got one teacher talking about their gifted classes, one teacher talking about their ESOL classes or ELL classes, one teacher talking about their exceptionality classes. How do you get them to have a shared PLC so that those conversations can take place where teacher A doesn't have to take a walk and go, well, I got the gifted classes, so I'll walk over here because we're going to do a little bit different. This one over here is working with the multicultural department because they're really doing language. You really need to think about how your teachers' workload and their class loads are differentiated themselves. That way, the teacher throughout the day will have to take on the lesson or task at hand in a different way, no matter what. That way, when they get to the PLCs, there's a shared conversation and belief that there is going to be a different way to reach different kids. And so that's one of the pieces that I've had to fight over the last 4 or 5 years being at the school I'm at, to really infuse that. Some teachers who said, I've never worked with kids who have had an IEP before. And it's like, well, okay, there's always a chance for growth. We're asking the kids to grow. I need you to grow as well. But to be honest with you, how do you hand a teacher 40 kids that have IEPs and say to them, there goes 40 days that I can tell you right now, you're not going to have a planning period. You're not going to have certain things in place because you're going to have to spend time sitting at an IEP. You've got to split the load so that it's even and that they can really come together at a PLC and have shared practices, as opposed to saying, well, these two only do this, so they don't really need to be a part of the PLC. Your PLC just ended, to be quite honest with you. Set your default culture at your school right away so that the learning is focused on each and every kid and everyone can contribute to those conversations and grow. Just my opinion.
Chris?
Tough act to follow there. I'm sitting here thinking about the importance of that. Listen, if you've got an auto mechanic who's only worked with analog devices and all of a sudden he's being transitioned into this completely digital world, and you've never given him the proper training to utilize computer diagnostics on an advanced computer-based vehicle, you're not going to be able to get this resolution of the problem. All right. Allowing teachers the opportunity to understand differentiation, that's fine and good. But in terms of setting goals, if we really want to get down to brass tacks, if we sit down and we focus on, what AJ hit on earlier, these active learning strategies, right? Personalized learning opportunities. If our goal is to get at a deep level of instruction to meet the needs of the kids where they are and teach them these 21st century skills, now that we're a fifth of the way through, the century, our goal should be active learning strategies. And then every message that we give is about active learning strategies. Here's a strategy. Here's how we practice it. Here's how we implement it. We go into classrooms. We're identifying active learning strategies. We're not looking at different elements of student engagement. Are the goals on the board? Is the agenda on the board? That's not the priority anymore. The priority is active learning strategies. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm right with you, Dean. Simplify, break it down. Whatever comes out of that funnel is our priority. And that is all that we provide. We still give support and feedback on other things, but we thump the drum of that important goal continuously.
Josh?
I don't think much more can be said than that. And I just would like to extend the conversation just one step more, is that once we talk about the goals and you have those conversations in the hallway, transitioning the students to the cafeteria, whenever you have that building relationships with the adults on the campus, and you go into the classroom and you understand that connection that you've already made, because we all know the platinum rule: treat people the way they want to be treated. Some people want to make sure that they hear feedback via email. Some people want to hear feedback at that moment. So as a very good coach, you need to understand your audience as the adults are there. And so you need to make sure that you have that street cred to have that feedback. Hey, remember, Josh, you said you wanted to do this. How's that going when there's a lull in the lesson? And it's always important that you do it within the gridiron, their classroom. You need to have the conversation there, because if you ask them, come and see me in my office, then that creates an automatic defense system. We need to meet them where the game is being played and have those reflective questions, either during transition, the second you're in the classroom and the students are doing their peer interaction, and you say, hey, teacher A, hey, teacher B, how's it going with this? I noticed this in your lesson frame that's going on. So it's not only providing them the times to break down the 9 weeks at a time, starting with the end in mind, but it's also their individual goals during the game, that class, and having those conversations is, hey, you know what I saw? I saw in teacher X's room that they did this, and this is how they differentiated. And you insert examples. If you want, I could have you covered, or I'll cover for you to go see it. And that's where you lead the pathway into instructional rounds, where they pick up the greatness that are the team, that is the team.
I love it, Josh.
Agreed.
Hey, AJ, I put you in a tough spot. Now you got to follow all those, man. So you can say ditto if you want, brother. But I tell you what, there's just some great stuff flowing right now.
No, I think everything's on point. You talk about teams, talk about bringing it together. I mean, that's what we need to do. We set our goals for our school. We're talking about engagement. We're talking about personalized learning. You know, I'm looking at things like grading practices. It all goes together, you know, and it can't be from me and my principal. It has to be from the teachers and the students. And I think getting them on board and being the team, that's where we're going to find out the actual goals for our school. So I think everything that you guys have just said and everything that you're putting in place, you know, as mentioned, put in the funnel, shake it up, see what comes out, but it should all come out together. And that's what we're going to do when we set goals.
Good stuff. Hey, no, there was one other thing that I want to throw out there, and I'm a huge proponent of this. We've gotten better at it over the years. It's a co-teaching platform within our schools and within our grade levels. So when you have the dynamic of a content-based teacher and a special education teacher doing that dance, sharing content, sharing planning, sharing best practices, sharing interventions, what you get then is that perfect model for that accommodation that we need for academic coaching. And if you look at it, you know, there's no such thing as failure on those type of teams, because you catch them ahead of time before you get there. And it's really important, you know, whether we're talking about goal setting, organizational skills, connecting with resources, study skills, motivation, time management, academic and social balance, test taking strategies, it's all encompassed in one. In your schools, do you have a co-teaching model right now that is actively working and humming? I love when I don't know. If I walked into a school and I couldn't tell you who the math teacher was or who the sped teacher was, guess what? They've got the dance down. I just see that active dance of two professional adults making it happen, making kids be successful. Helping kids be successful. Talk about that. That is a real great thing. And let's go down. AJ, we'll start off with you. Do you have that co-teaching element in your school?
Yeah, we do have that. And it's exactly what you said. I can walk into a classroom, science classroom. I don't have to know that's my science teacher. I know that they're teaching together, that they have worked together and they've planned together, that this content, you know, is not just for this student or that student, that these teachers put something together that's for the entire class, that you can see exactly who it is that is in charge. And it should be everybody. When I was in the classroom, that co-teaching took me a while, you know, as a somewhat control freak. I wanted to be the person in charge. So, you know, when you give it up to the teachers and you have that perfect mix, and you can see that it's a perfect mix, you don't want to break that up. You want to keep pushing forward.
You don't. Yeah. Joe?
No, absolutely. I think that when I came in, and just so you guys know, I did have a profoundly handicapped sister growing up. So that was really one of the pieces that I truly believed in for exceptionalities and understanding how to bridge that gap. And also my love for students who are English language acquisition learners, because I think, in all honesty, a student who's already going into their second language along their pathway already has major steps ahead of other students in terms of the advantage. But getting into that, really what I saw when I got to the school was a support facilitation model for English language learners and exceptionalities, where teachers were coming in with a 7 to 10 minute little window, and they came in, and whatever the teacher was working on, they came in and tried to get the student through it. And I just found that to be too much of a burden on the kids. They weren't really getting what really needed to come from it. And so we switched over to a collaboration model just over 2 years ago. It's been a little bit of fight along the way, but they really have embraced the understanding that this is a dance. This is walking in the room not knowing who is the teacher and who's not. And to be honest with you, it really leveraged our capability to have a rotational model within the classroom that really made sense. And so that really helped us out along the way, because when you get into secondary, some of them don't understand that kidney-shaped table is for small group as opposed to storage. And so that's really where we wanted to get the teachers, understanding that they can get into that small group. And to be honest with you, I found a lot of teachers, that was an intimidation thing for them to be able to run a small group, especially in language arts or reading, because they didn't want to, be looking like we're just doing round robin reading, or find out what the kids, problems are. Because think about it, you walk by a closet that looks like it's about to explode if you open the door. How many times do you walk past it without opening the door because you don't want to get into that mess right now? There is an intrinsic thing to think about that. And teachers know that there are certain kids who have such a long way to go. They may put that off and provide work that they know that kid can get through to build up that kid's confidence, but then we're loving them to a level 1. We're loving them to an F. And so those are things to keep into consideration along the way. So yeah, sorry guys, going off on another tangent, but when you say collaboration model, I mean, that's me all day. I love it.
Good stuff. Josh?
At the current campus, we don't have that set up, but the one that I came from, we did. And I think, just to add a side note, as everything else has been said, is as the person that sits in our chair, we need to make sure that when we team up people, it has to be targeted and focused, because there are too many individuals that appropriate the classroom, the content teacher, and then treats the SPED teacher like they're, go make me copies. Go bring me this material. And you know what? That was your failure, not the teacher's failure, but that was your failure as an administrator to put two personalities that do not work together. As coaches, we know that, especially when you're a sectional coach, you have to work with a lot of personalities, a lot of narcissism in athletics. Well, you know what? That doesn't deviate that much in the classroom, especially if I'm going to be accountable for those kids, I'm going to do it my way, because you know what? Those scores reflect off of me. Got you. I understand that. That's valued. That's why we're bringing in this other team member to make sure that they're to support you completely. So one of the things that allowed us to make sure that they worked hand in glove the best that we could was making sure that all instructional aides and SPED teachers took the time off, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the report card, to break down the 9 weeks. They were part of that. I never sent away the instructional aides to work in the classroom. They were part of all PD, because what are they? Instructional aides. They're there to provide instruction. Just because they're hourlies and they don't work 40 hours doesn't mean that they're not crucial to understanding what the academic game plan is for that campus. And always having those sometimes awkward conversations, I call them, when people are saying, are we going to have an awkward conversation? When we're having two adults having conflict in front of kids. Yep. Because there are SPED teachers that are very good at their content, but they're not allowed to flourish because that's my classroom. And that's the reality. I just like for people to see that we present great things that are happening, but when you sit in our chairs, we're dealing with more of the negativity at times when it comes down to the human factor.
Chris?
First off, all students are ours when we talk about that co-teaching. An IEP doesn't mean that the special ed teacher is the teacher of those students in a co-taught environment. It means that the special educator is the liaison for the IEP elements. They're the experts on that. However, the relationship for co-teaching happens really at this level. You've got your instructional learning expert and you've got your content and teaching expert. I mean, at a basic level, everybody's got all these different tricks, right? But if we've got a math teacher, and I'm a math teacher, so I'm just going with the math analogy. Every teacher out there is equal in this. But if I'm a math teacher and I know my content and I know how to utilize manipulatives and I know how to frame the content in a way that kids can conceptualize it and visualize it, but I don't know how to break it down and differentiate it to the child at the grade level, not giving them fourth grade work, because that's not what, we talked a little bit about that a little earlier. We have to give them access to that grade level curriculum. The co-teaching relationship needs to have a balance and a structure. And this is the lesson that I want to present. Here's the mode that I think is best to go about it. My special educator might have some real key ideas on how students with disabilities or some students who have gaps in their learning might be able to best access that curriculum at the grade level. So we talk about that content expertise and we talk about that learning expert merging their skills together to make this dynamic lesson. And that comes down to the planning time, the collaboration, but it starts with our students, not his or her students. That drives me nuts. I can't stand it. And I think that message is pretty clear in our building.
I think it's probably pretty clear in all of our buildings, quite frankly, because again, in order to get where we need to be, that's the only lens that we can look through. And we got to utilize our resources that we have in front of us. And more importantly, Josh, to your point, we are coaching people. We are helping people with multiple different types of personalities understand their role and how they can help the overall child become his or her best person they can be. And ultimately, that's what our job is as head coaches, as principals, as instructional leaders, whatever you want to call us, okay? Because we do that every single day, and we continue to look for ways to become better and better. Hey, guys, we're running out of time. 42 minutes of great conversation. I think we could go on for about an hour. Chris, I'm going to kick it over to you and let you just wrap it all up for us.
You got it. Thanks, Dean. Joe, Josh, AJ, great talk today on academic coaching, because it really comes down to, providing our kids with opportunities to be successful. And, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to teach a bunch of kids in my building a class called Keys to Success. And all that it was geared to do was identify how they learned well, what they were passionate about, and how they could move themselves forward in any content area. And our jobs as leaders, and any teachers out there, you are leaders, you are coaches, find out how to assign your players to the best of their best position possible in the classroom, help them be successful, help them march forward, and acknowledge when they've achieved above the level that they were achieving at previously, because our jobs is to be cheerleader as well. Everybody out there, it's a Saturday morning. It's time to get our weekends on and going. Joe, Josh, AJ, of course, Dean. Man, it's been a great 43 minutes and 10 seconds. Have a great one, everybody. Be well, be better, and just keep on chugging. We are out.